Mike Enslin was quickly becoming known as a famous ghost hunter. Mike loved to explore places and hotels that were infamous for ghosts, places where people were even too scared to go. But the word fear simply wasn't in Mike's dictionary. He only believed what he saw with his own eyes. He would spend a night at any haunted place and write about his experiences in his book. He had previously written 3 horror tour guide books named 1000 Mansion, 1000 Graveyard, and 1000 Lighthouse. They became quite famous. After that, many hotel owners started inviting Mike to investigate their own hotels. They claimed their hotels were haunted too. They wanted Mike to write about the spooky incidents at their hotels in his book too. However, so far, everyone's claims had turned out to be fake. They were just making such false claims to promote their hotels. One day, Mike took some time off from his work and headed to the beach, planning to go surfing. Seeing people surfing on the big waves, Mike grabbed his surfboard and started paddling out towards the ocean waves too. Just then, Mike spotted an airplane flying in the sky, carrying an advertisement banner for an insurance company. He stopped in the water and started reading that advertisement. Just then, a strong wave suddenly sent Mike's surfboard flying with a jolt. The surfboard hit Mike on the head, knocking him unconscious, and he started sinking into the water. Then, that wave washed Mike ashore. Mike lay lifeless on the shore. Just then, a man came running to help Mike. At that very moment, Mike coughed and got up. Mike was safe and sound. Then, the next day, Mike got back to work. He went to a post office, picked up his mail, and then went to a cafe to read them. Most of them were advertisements for haunted hotels. Just then, Mike found a postcard among them with a photo of a hotel called Dolphin located in New York. When Mike turned the postcard over, it said, "Do not go into room number 1408. Right then, Mike decided he absolutely had to go into room number 1408 at the Hotel Dolphin. He called the Hotel Dolphin and asked for a reservation for room number 1408, but the hotel receptionist flat out refused to give him room number 1408. She said Mike could get any room except for 1408. This seemed very strange to Mike. He immediately started looking through old newspapers related to the Hotel Dolphin. He found out that in 1938, a factory owner had jumped to his death from the window of room number 1408 at the Hotel Dolphin. And not only that, but more than a dozen people had died in that room by now. After reading this news, Mike's curiosity to uncover the mystery of that hotel room only increased even more. He immediately called his publisher Sam, who was in New York, and asked for his help to stay in that hotel room. After talking to his lawyer about this, Sam told Mike that legally, if a hotel has an empty room and the hotel staff refuses to give it to a guest even when they ask, then the guest can take legal action against that hotel. Sam assured Mike that his lawyer would book room number 1408 at the Hotel Dolphin for him. But then Sam asked Mike if he really wanted to come back to New York, because New York City held a lot of baggage for Mike. Mike was married, but he and his wife Lily had fallen out over something, and a few years earlier he had left Lily and moved to Los Angeles. Mike's father always advised him to get Lily back in his life. That's why Mike had also distanced himself from his father. Now, Mike was only concerned with his work, so the very next night he arrived at the Dolphin Hotel in New York City. At the reception, Mike told the receptionist that he had booked room number 1408 for that night. Hearing this, the receptionist asked Mike to wait for a bit and called the hotel manager, Gerald Olin, over. Olin brought Mike to his office and, handing him an expensive bottle of liquor, said, "Mr. Enslin, this $800 bottle of liquor will be a gift from me to you if you take any other room instead of room number 1408. To this, Mike said, "Your gift is certainly valuable. Mr. Olin, you cannot stop me from staying in room number 1408. Hearing this, Olin said, "You know how many deaths have happened in room number 1408, don't you? To date, no one has been able to stay there for more than an hour. And now I can't risk another death in this hotel. So it would be better if you don't stay in room number 1408. Mike smiled and said, "Good try, but you won't be able to scare me. I know there have been 22 suicides in that room so far, but such incidents have happened in many other hotels too. And I've stayed there as well. Nothing happened to me there." Hearing this, Olin smiled and said, "A total of 22 deaths, huh? You must have only read that much in the newspapers." But all those were just natural deaths, the ones reported in newspapers. Actually, room 1408 has seen 56 deaths so far, and they all happened in super weird ways. Saying this, Olin showed Mike a file with photos and details of everyone who had died in that hotel room. Olin then added that back in 1912, the first guest to die in room 1408 was a sewing machine salesman named Kevin Lee. He actually cut his own throat, and before he died, he was stitching his severed neck back up with a needle and thread. And get this, a woman staying in that room actually drowned in her own bowl of chicken soup. Mike was totally shocked after hearing all that. After this, Olin told Mike, "This file has all the info about the deaths in room 1408. You can totally chill here in my office and ask me anything you want about room 1408 for your book. But seriously, please drop this obsession with staying in room 1408. Mike thought for a sec after that. He then asked Olin for a glass of that super expensive booze. Olin just handed him the whole bottle. But after just one glass of that drink, Mike said, "Give me the key to 1408. Mike's stubbornness. Finally. Olin totally caved and handed over the key to room 1408. And he took him up to the floor in the elevator, where room 1408 was located. While they were going up, Mike asked, "So, like you said, no one goes in that room, right? It must have been shut for years, and the bed sheets must be covered in dust." Olin explained, "Once a month, the hotel staff clean that room under my watchful eye. But we seriously never stay in there for more than 10 minutes. And I make sure all the doors in that room stay wide open while they're cleaning. But even with all that caution, once a lady servant got locked in the bathroom. She was only stuck in there for a few moments, actually. Then, when we got her out, we saw she'd poked out both her eyes with scissors and was just laughing like a maniac." Hearing Olin say all that, Mike just burst out laughing. He said, "So you're trying to say there's a ghost, a spirit, or some devil in that room?" Olin replied, "No, there's no ghost, spirit, or devil in there. That room is the devil." Just then, they reached the floor where room 1408 was located. Olin told Mike, "I can only come this far with you. I'm telling you one last time, do not go into that room." But Mike just said, "See you tomorrow morning." Saying this, Mike headed towards his room, and Olin went back down the elevator. Mike kept walking, reading about all the deaths that had happened in that room. The super strange deaths in that room had actually freaked Mike out a little too. Just then, Mike found himself standing right in front of room 1408. Right there, he saw a woman going into room 1410 with her kid, which was right next door to his room. Then, Mike nervously opened the room's door. It was pitch black inside. The moment Mike flicked on the lights, his face totally changed as he looked inside, because the room was actually super clean, tidy, and even luxurious. Mike casually closed the room door without a worry. Next, Mike went into the bathroom. First, he ripped off some toilet paper and wiped away his sweat. Then he pulled out his tape recorder. He used it to record his experiences from haunted places. Turning on his tape recorder and checking out the room, Mike said, "Gotta hand it to Olin, the hotel manager. For a moment there, he actually scared me too. But this is just a super normal hotel room. There's a Bible in the drawer and a fridge in the living room that's packed with wine bottles and some snacks. Also, there's a thermostat device to control the room temp, but it's stuck on a super high setting, so it's gotten pretty hot in here. There are some stains on the carpet, and there's an antique wardrobe that looks ancient. Besides a few normal things and 24 paintings, I don't really see anything special here." Mike was lying on the bed describing the room scene into his tape recorder. Then he got up and went to the window, saying the view outside the room wasn't great either. There was just a building across the street and traffic noise messing up the peace. Mike was just recording all this when suddenly a song started playing in the room. Mike, startled, spun around and saw the song was playing on a radio with a clock right next to the bed. Then Mike noticed 2 chocolate packets on the bed, which was weird because he had literally just gotten off that bed a few minutes ago. There were no chocolates there at that time. But then it hit Mike that this must totally be Olin's trick. One of Olin's guys must be hiding somewhere in the room trying to scare him. Mike started opening doors one by one to find them, but he didn't see anyone there. Just then, when Mike got to the bathroom, his mind was blown by what he saw there. Just a little while ago, he had torn off some toilet paper and wiped his sweat. But now, someone had put the toilet paper back neatly. This was super weird, because Mike had only gone to the window for a little bit. How could anyone put the chocolate in the room and fix the toilet paper so quickly? Mike searched the entire room, but found no evidence of anyone being there. Now, Mike was getting really stressed out inside. Just then, he saw a shadow in a ventilation compartment on the ceiling. Mike realized it must be Lynn's guy. Mike yelled at him, "Try harder, you idiot! These tricks are useless!" During all this, the room was starting to get really hot. So Mike called reception, but before he could say anything, the receptionist asked him, "Sir, do you want to check out of the hotel now?" Mike snapped back, "Why on earth would I want to check out? I called so you could send an engineer to fix my room's thermostat device." To this, the receptionist said they were sending an engineer to his room right away. Hearing this, Mike felt a sense of relief. Now Mike started to suspect there was definitely some secret chamber in that room. Whoever was trying to scare him was hiding in that chamber. On the other hand, the thought also terrified him that who knows how many people had died a painful death in that room, and a dead body had been found in every single corner of it. At that moment, Mike turned off all the room lights. Then he pulled out his ultraviolet light and started looking at every corner of the room in its glow. Even though the room had been cleaned, under the ultraviolet light, bloodstains were visible in every corner and on the walls of that room. Seeing the bloodstains, Mike could imagine what horrible deaths people must have suffered in that room. After this, Mike turned the lights back on and sat on the sofa, starting to record all these things on a tape recorder. Just then, there was a sudden knock on the door. Mike jumped off the sofa in fright, calmed himself down, and went to the door to see a man standing outside. The man was an engineer who had come to fix the room's thermostat device. Mike started to open the door for the engineer, but the door was jammed. Mike pulled the door with all his might, and it suddenly burst open, making Mike almost fall backward. The engineer asked Mike, "Is the thermostat making the room too hot or too cold?" To this, Mike said, "Why don't you come inside and see for yourself?" But the engineer strictly refused to enter the room. He said he could tell Mike how to fix the thermostat, but he couldn't risk coming inside. Mike had no other choice. The engineer gave Mike instructions while standing at the doorway. Thanks to that, Mike managed to fix the thermostat device. When Mike turned around to thank the engineer, he saw that the engineer had already left. Mike closed the door and came back inside, picking up the bottle of alcohol the manager had given him. Then he sat on the bed and slowly started to get drunk. Just then, the same song suddenly started playing again on the radio next to him, all by itself. Mike's glass of alcohol slipped from his hand out of fear. Mike angrily turned off that radio. But then, that radio turned itself back on again, and this time, a 1-hour timer was set on its clock. Mike stepped back in fear. At that moment, Mike remembered what Manager Olin had said, that no one could last more than an hour in that room. However, Mike still felt it was Olin's trick. He started cursing him silently to himself. But then, suddenly, Mike couldn't hear anything at all. Mike couldn't understand what was happening. He went to the window and tried to listen for the sound of traffic, but he couldn't hear any sound now. As a worried Mike was moving away from the window pane suddenly dropped down. This badly crushed Mike's hand. Mike cried out in pain. He somehow pulled his hand out of the window and came to the bathroom, starting to clean the blood with cold water. But then, in the very next moment, a stream of hot water burst out from that tap instead of cold. This scalded Mike's wound. Mike, writhing in pain, huddled in a corner. He angrily kicked the tap shut. Then, Mike came out of the bathroom and tied his handkerchief around his hand. Just then, that same song started playing on the radio again, suddenly. This time, fed up, Mike yanked the radio's plug right out. But even after pulling the plug, the timer on the radio's clock didn't stop. Seeing this, Mike was stunned. Just then, the phone rang. Mike picked up the phone, and the receptionist told him, "Mr. Naslin, the sandwich you ordered will take another 10 minutes. We apologize for the inconvenience." Hearing this, Mike was shocked because he hadn't ordered any sandwich. Mike told the receptionist, "Okay, I give up."
"Okay, you guys need to stop playing these games. I need to check out of here right now because I'm injured. Book me a taxi quickly. I need to go to the hospital." But the receptionist totally ignored Mike's words and started telling him about the kitchen menu. Hearing that, Mike swore at the receptionist and hung up the phone. Mike was completely fed up with everything that was happening and didn't want to stay there for another second. He picked up his bag and walked towards the door, trying to open it, but the door was jammed again. Even with Mike putting his full strength into it, the door wouldn't open. He thought maybe the door was locked. He tried to open the door with the key, but as soon as he turned it, the key snapped like a twig, and the rest of it got stuck inside the door. Then, Mike somehow managed to unlock the door by sticking a knife into the keyhole, and when he grabbed the doorknob to open the door, it didn't just break off, it came right off in his hand. Fed up with it, Mike started kicking the door, trying to break it open and shouting for help. But neither the door nor Mike's voice could get out past the door. Just then, when Mike peeked out through the peephole, he saw his own eyes staring back at him in the peephole. Terrified, Mike backed away from the door. Then he ran to the window and started shouting for help, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of the traffic. Suddenly, Mike saw a man sitting by a window in the building across the street. Mike screamed and yelled, calling out to him for help. Luckily, the man saw Mike and got up, coming closer to the window. Mike yelled and motioned for him to call the police, but then the man at the window started mimicking Mike instead of helping him. Whatever Mike did, the man copied him exactly. It was as if Mike was standing in front of a mirror, and Mike was completely freaked out by this. But because of the darkness, Mike couldn't see the man's face clearly. So Mike picked up a lamp and shined a light on his face. At that exact same moment, the man also picked up a lamp and shined the light towards his own face. Then what Mike saw totally blew his mind. The man was Mike's duplicate. Suddenly, someone appeared behind him and smashed his head with a hammer. Seeing that, Mike also turned around in fear, and the same hammer-wielding person was standing right behind him. The person started relentlessly attacking Mike with a hammer, and Mike somehow dodged him, closing his eyes and huddling in a corner, and the very next moment when he opened his eyes, the person had vanished. Mike finally breathed a sigh of relief. Mike got up and went back to the window, throwing a lamp down, hoping someone might look up and call the police to help him. But the strange thing was, the lamp disappeared into thin air halfway down. Seeing this, Mike was utterly bewildered. Mike couldn't understand what was happening to him. Then, Mike remembered that before coming here, Lynn had given him an expensive bottle of alcohol, which he had drunk, and he had also eaten that chocolate. Mike was sure that the alcohol or chocolate must have been laced with some drug, and that's why he was having hallucinations. Mike tried to get a grip on his mind, but then he heard a voice from the living room. "Daddy, I can see you." Hearing that, Mike's mind went numb, because it was the voice of his daughter, Katie, who had died a few years ago. Mike ran into the living room, but there was no one there. Then, the very next moment, he started hearing Katie's voice in every corner of the room. Frightened, Mike huddled in on himself and sat down in one spot. Just then, Mike's gaze shifted towards the window. Mike saw a man and a woman jumping one by one from the window there, and right after that, he heard a cracking sound in the living room. When Mike ran into the living room, he saw that a crack had appeared in one of the walls, and a stream of blood was flowing from that crack. All these events had trapped Mike in a web of reality and illusion. He started to feel like he was dreaming, because such bizarre things could only happen in a dream. Mike thought that if he was dreaming, he could do anything, and he wouldn't die. With this thought, Mike decided he would try to get out through the window and into the other room. He looked at the map on the door and estimated that the window of the other room was only 18 feet away from the outside. He climbed out the window and with great difficulty managed to get his feet onto a narrow, flat surface. Planting them firmly, he began sliding towards the window of the other room. According to his estimation, the window of the other room was 9 steps away, so he risked his life and somehow slid covering the 9 steps, and then he felt a strong jolt. When he looked, there was no window for any room as far as he could see.
Except for room number 1408, Mike stumbled in panic, almost falling. He somehow got a grip on his fear, steadied himself, and went back to his window. Just as he was about to climb inside, an unknown woman suddenly attacked him from inside. Mike pulled back to dodge her and started falling from the building, but luckily he managed to grab onto a wall. Just then, the woman who attacked Mike jumped out of the window, and the window started to close. Mike climbed with all his might and squeezed back into the room just before the window slammed shut. Mike finally felt a sense of relief. Now Mike was convinced this wasn't a dream, because if it were, he would have definitely woken up from all these crazy shocks by now. Right then, Mike's eyes landed on a map stuck to the door. He saw that all the other hotel rooms had vanished from the map, and only room number 1408 was still there. And it was right in the middle of the hotel. When Mike looked around, he saw that the room's window was completely bricked up with walls. Seeing all this, Mike felt like his head was about to explode. At that very moment, Mike remembered his phone. He pulled his phone out of his bag, but there was no signal, so he immediately opened his laptop. Luckily, the internet was working on his laptop. He quickly video called his wife, Lily, and good news, Lily actually picked up. But Lily was super mad at Mike for leaving her. Mike started apologizing and begging her for help. He said, "Lily, please call the police and tell them I'm stuck in room number 1408 at the Dolphin Hotel." Lily got even more annoyed hearing that Mike was in New York and hadn't even bothered to visit her. Mike kept asking Lily for help, but she just kept complaining. Suddenly, the room's fire sensor went off, and water started gushing from the fire sprinkler above. As soon as the water hit the laptop, it shut down. In a fit of rage, Mike threw a piece of wood at the fire sprinkler, which made the water stop. While all this was happening, Mike's eyes caught sight of the ventilation duct near the fire sprinkler. Mike got an idea. He could escape the room through the ventilation system. Mike used his knife to open the ventilation grill and climbed inside. Crawling through that vent, Mike reached the ventilation grill of another room and peeked down. Below, a woman was sitting with a baby in her lap. Mike called out to the woman for help, and that's when something really weird happened. Mike's own voice started coming from that room. At that exact moment, the woman looked towards Mike. That woman was none other than Mike's wife, Lily, holding their daughter, Katie. Turns out, it was actually a scene from Mike's own past. Seeing it made Mike's head spin. He moved forward out of fear and then spotted another ventilation grill up ahead. But when he peeked down, he saw another event from his past all over again. It was an argument between him and his dad about something. All these scenes made Mike remember some of the mistakes he'd made in his past. So, a few years back, Mike and his wife Lily were living a super happy life with their daughter Katie. But then one day, they found out Katie had a terminal illness and wouldn't live for much longer. This news completely shattered Mike and Lily's lives. Lily had lost all hope, and in Katie's final days, she kept teaching her about religion. She'd say that everyone eventually passes away and goes to heaven, and that Katie would also go to heaven, where she'd meet God and find all the happiness in the world. But Mike was an atheist. He wanted Lily to stop pushing religion on Katie and instead try to boost her spirits. Then, one day, Katie passed away. That's when Mike started blaming Lily for Katie's death. He'd argue with Lily, saying that if she had just focused on cheering Katie up instead of praying, maybe Katie would have lived. The scene Mike was seeing right now showed his father trying to explain to him that he was wrong to blame Lily for Katie's death. But Mike got angry with his dad about it too, and he left both his father and Lily to move to Los Angeles forever. Since then, Lily had been all alone, and Mike's dad was living out his old age in a nursing home. Suddenly, Mike's dad glared at him, and scared, Mike quickly moved further into the ventilation shaft. But now Mike couldn't see any way to get out of the ventilation system. Just a little further ahead, Mike spotted a dead body, completely covered in dust and cobwebs. It looked like the guy had been dead for years. When Mike got closer, he saw that the man had needle and thread stuck in his neck. Mike realized it was Kevin O'Malley's body, the very first guest of room number 1408, and he had tried to sew his own throat after cutting it and then died trying to stitch it back together with a needle and thread. Suddenly, the dead body woke up. Seeing that, Mike was so scared his breath hitched. He turned around and bolted out of there, and that corpse totally grabbed Mike's feet. Struggling, Mike kicked the corpse hard in the head, totally cracking its skull, and Mike quickly ran and jumped back into that same room 1408, through the vents. Back in the room, Mike finally breathed a sigh of relief. To chill out, Mike thought about grabbing a drink, and when he opened the fridge, he saw Olin, the hotel manager, staring back at him from inside. Olin asked Mike, "So, Mr. Enslin, tell me, do you believe in ghosts now, or are you still a non-believer?" Hearing that, Mike angrily shot back, "I knew it, Olin. This is all you're doing. What do you even want from me?" Olin then said, "You don't believe in ghosts or God, right? You just make fun of ghosts and God, and you totally hurt people's feelings. What do you think? Why do people believe in ghosts? Just for laughs or for entertainment? But that's not it at all. Believing in ghosts helps people feel like even after death, humans live on as immortal souls." And hearing that, Mike totally lost it and started screaming angrily at Olin. But actually, Mike was just yelling at the fridge. Olin wasn't even there at all. Mike closed the fridge, came back, picked up the Bible, and mumbled to himself, "Okay, I was wrong. Ghosts are real, and if ghosts are real, then God is too." With that, Mike opened the Bible, ready to read. But every single page of that Bible was totally blank now. Then, Mike started seeing a past event again, just like before. It showed his daughter Katie spending her last moments on a hospital bed, with her mom Lily comforting her, saying she'd go to God after death and find good friends there. But Mike was super mad about what Lily was saying. After that, Mike saw the day Katie passed away, and Mike was telling Lily that if she'd just given Katie hope to live, instead of talking about God, she might have made it. Watching that scene, Mike realized how wrong he'd been, because saving Katie was completely out of anyone's control. Just then, the room got so freezing cold that ice started forming everywhere. Mike, shivering from the cold, wrapped himself in a sheet, sat in a corner, and started lighting things on fire from the room just to get warm. Mike now felt like he'd landed in hell and was getting punished for all his bad stuff. Suddenly, Mike heard a voice coming from his laptop. It was his wife, Lily's voice. Mike quickly opened his laptop and was stoked to see Lily on a video call. Mike then told Lily to call the cops and get him some help. Lily replied that she'd already called the police and sent them to room 1408, but there was no one there. Mike was totally shocked to hear that. Then Lily told Mike, "Don't worry, I'll be there to pick you up myself in 15 minutes. But Mike checked the clock and realized he only had 2 minutes left. Mike told Lily she had to come quickly or he wouldn't survive. But then, what was showing on the screen? Mike's own image started talking to Lily. It told Lily to come to that room in 15 minutes. Hearing this, Mike realized that room wanted to mess with Lily too now. Mike tried to stop Lily from coming to that hotel room, but then the call just disconnected.
Right then, the room suddenly started falling apart by itself, and a massive storm and rain began inside. At that same moment, all the paintings in the room totally seemed to come alive. Seeing this, Mike furiously hit an ocean painting with a piece of wood, which smashed it, and ocean water started pouring out into the room. The room completely filled with water, and Mike totally drowned in it. Then, the very next second, something super shocking happened. Mike's eyes opened, and he found himself lying on a beach. Mike was wearing his surfing gear. Turns out, this was that time Mike almost drowned while surfing, and the waves just washed him ashore. Then, some guy saw Mike in trouble, came over, and seeing how bad Mike looked, got him admitted to the hospital. A little while later, when Mike woke up, he saw he was on a hospital bed, and Lily was right there with him. Mike asked Lily, "Am I in New York?" Lily told him he was in Los Angeles. She explained that while surfing, Mike's board hit his head, which totally knocked him out. After that, some people got him to the hospital. Mike was shocked to find himself there. He told Lily that he'd been stuck in room 1408 at the Dolphin Hotel and had even called her from there. But Lily said she never got a call from Mike. Hearing that, Mind totally reeled. As soon as Mike was discharged from the hospital, he went to a restaurant with Lily and told her everything that happened to him in room 1408. To that, Lily just told Mike it was all just a bad dream, nothing more.
But just then, Mike spotted a woman in that restaurant. It was the same woman Mike had seen jumping from the window of room 1408. But as soon as Mike blinked, a different woman appeared in her place. So it was just Mike's imagination. The next day, Mike went to the post office and picked up his mail. Mike searched through the letters for that Hotel Dolphin postcard, but he didn't find any. Then, Mike started digging through newspapers, researching the incidents at Hotel Dolphin. Just like before, he found a news story about a factory owner's suicide in a newspaper. Mike had previously read that this factory owner had taken his own life by jumping from Hotel Dolphin's room 1408. But now, the newspaper said the cause of his death was something totally different. That newspaper stated the factory owner had jumped from a bridge. After reading that news, Mike finally started to realize that everything that had happened to him was just a terrible dream he had while he was unconscious from surfing. But that dream had made Mike confront his past mistakes. Mike felt ashamed for abandoning Lily and his father. Mike went to Lily and his dad and apologized. But that dream was stuck in Mike's mind like it was totally real. To get the dream out of his head, Mike wrote an entire book about it, naming it 1408. He then took that book, bound for his publisher in New York. He came to the post office to send it to Sam. He told an employee there, "I need to send this package to New York ASAP." As soon as the employee turned towards Mike, Mike's jaw dropped, because the employee was the waiter from the Dolphin Hotel. Then Mike realized all the post office employees were actually Hotel Dolphin staff. Suddenly, those people just started tearing down the post office. As the post office wall crumbled, the walls of Hotel Dolphin's room 1408 appeared on the other side. Mike's head began to spin, and in an instant, he was back in room 1408 again. This meant the events that happened in room 1408 weren't Mike's dream at all, but reality, and Mike still couldn't escape the hotel room. But this time, the room looked like a total wreck. Mike couldn't figure out why all this was happening to him. Just then, Mike saw his daughter Katie there. Mike hugged his daughter and started crying, but then the radio suddenly crackled to life again, and Katie turned to ashes right there. Mike, completely freaked out, started throwing things around the room, eventually collapsing from exhaustion. Just then, the 1-hour timer on the radio's clock ended, and Mike found himself back in the hotel room, all clean and tidy like before, with a new 1-hour timer already ticking on the clock. Just then, the phone in the room rang. Mike picked up the phone and yelled, "Why don't you just kill me? Why are you torturing me like this?" To this, a voice replied, "Mr. Newslin," it said, "we give every guest 2 choices. You can enjoy our services repeatedly every hour if you wish, or you can check out using our express checkout service." Hearing this, Mike put the receiver back on the table and walked into the living room. That's when he saw a noose hanging there. So, express checkout meant taking his own life to escape the room and the world forever. Now Mike understood why guests in that room always ended up taking their own lives. Turns out there wasn't a ghost, spirit, or demon in that room. The room itself was the demon, tormenting its guests by showing them glimpses of their past sins and trapping them in such horrifying situations that they'd lose their minds. And for those who somehow survived, the room offered 2 choices. Either they'd suffer every single hour, or they could end their lives the way the room suggested and find freedom from this world. This was why no one had ever returned alive from that demonic room. At that very moment, Mike saw his own dead body hanging from the noose in the mirror. Mike picked up the phone again and declared, "I will check out, but on my terms." With that, Mike hung up. But then the phone rang again. Mike picked up and a voice said, "My apologies, sir. I forgot to tell you. Your wife called a little while ago. She'll be in this room in 5 minutes." Hearing this, Mike yelled, "Do whatever you want with me, but leave my wife alone." Just then, the phone completely melted. Mike thought for a moment, then grabbed a liquor bottle and sat on the couch. He tore his handkerchief, stuffed it into the liquor bottle, and made a makeshift bomb. Then Mike said, "I've been selfish my whole life, but I won't let anyone else be sacrificed to this room now. I'm going to die, but I'm taking this demonic room down with me."
So, Mike lit the bottle on fire and tossed it into the bedroom. The whole room immediately started burning, and Mike just chilled on the sofa, smoking a cigarette. Meanwhile, the fire in that room caused total chaos all over the hotel. That's when Lily arrived, and seeing the hotel on fire, begged the firefighters to save her husband, Mike. But then there was a huge explosion in the room, and Mike was gone, taken by that evil room. Right after that, the ink of room number 1408 on the door started bleeding like blood and completely vanished. This meant that the evil room was finally gone forever. A few days later, Mike's funeral was held. Mike's wife, Lily, buried his body right next to their daughter Katie's grave. After that, Lily started to leave. Just then, Olin, the manager of the Dolphin Hotel, came to meet Lily. Olin told Lily, "I'm so sorry about Mike's death." But Mike didn't die for nothing by destroying room 1408, thanks to Mike, ever. After saying this, Olin handed Lily a box and spoke again. "This box has some of Mike's stuff that we found while cleaning out room 1408. But a heartbroken Lily wasn't really in a state to think straight then. She refused to take the box and just walked away. Then Olin went back to his car. That's when Olin opened the box of Mike's stuff. Inside, he even found Mike's old tape recorder. Olin started listening. Suddenly, Olin heard the voice of Mike's daughter, Katie. She was calling out for her dad over and over. Olin was totally shocked to hear it. Then he looked in his car's rearview mirror. He saw a little girl behind him calling out for her dad. Olin figured he must have just heard the little girl behind him. But then, suddenly, he saw Mike in the back seat, terribly burned. Olin quickly turned around to look, but there was nobody there. Olin laughed it off, thinking it was just his imagination, then started the car and drove away. And just like that, the story zoomed back to room 1408, where Mike was still chilling in that evil room, standing by the window, taking a drag from his cigarette, even though the room was totally burned out. That's when his daughter called out to Mike, and hearing her voice, Mike walked right through the door. Mike was finally free from that evil room.